All right, this is video number one of a series of videos that we have created for the CFA Certificate in ESG Investing. These videos are designed to guide you through the chapters, each single chapter. And basically the idea is that we show you what the learning objectives are. We always find it's useful to understand what does the CFA want us to understand whenever we read the chapter. Then explain what the overarching message is for each of the chapters. And then, whenever possible, we try to distill the chapter into the 5 most important topics. Now, watching this video does not substitute for reading the chapter. We strongly advise that you read each chapter of the curriculum. Maybe then you watch this video just to recalibrate and see whether you have focused on the right things. And then you start with the Q-Bank, as well as with the notes that we have produced, where you can find each of the topics quite easily. Now, without any further ado, let's dive into Chapter 1, Introduction to ESG Investing. Now, as the name suggests, it's about introducing the topic of ESG. As you will read through the chapter, you will find that a lot of time is spent on how the term and concept of ESG, environmental, social, and governance, as a set of factors in the investing world, got to exist, got to be. It also highlights how varied the implementation of ESG is. ESG is quite often used as an umbrella term, responsible investing, impact investing, best in class, thematic, value-driven. Each of these investment approaches are quite distinct from each other, quite different, but broadly fall under the umbrella term ESG investing. Now, another important idea this curriculum tries to get across is the incentive for corporates to adhere to ESG norms. It talks a little bit about how shareholder engagement with companies tries to improve the ESG metrics. This is quite strongly connected also to the advancements of concepts like the triple bottom line and corporate social responsibility. But it also begs the question, what is a company's duty? Is it to increase shareholder value? And then how does that compare with something, like implementing ESG, which is much more of an alignment with stakeholder value? How does that equate with the firm's fiduciary duty? At the core of the challenge is the question, does ESG integration erode financial returns? I think that's the number one kind of question that this chapter tries to dig out a little bit and explain. Now, the chapter further raises awareness of why ESG matters. It shows the Stockholm Resilience Center's 9 planetary boundaries. This, in essence, is why we need to care about ESG. The planetary boundaries is a visual illustration of our biggest environmental challenges: ocean acidification, chemical pollution, land conversion, biodiversity loss, air pollution, and more. It further talks about the notion of materiality. Is it efficient to focus on each issue that a company is faced with from an environmental, social, and governance perspective? The answer is no. This would take too much time, it would take too much resources, and the effects of solving these issues would probably not even move the needle in trying to create a more sustainable world. So instead, it makes much more sense to focus on issues that are material, and by that we mean financially material. The chapter then further talks about some of the opportunities that can arise from investing in sustainable companies. We are faced with large, secular, long-term megatrends, demographic changes and wealth inequality, technological innovation, emerging markets and urbanization, climate change. These trends create issues, for sure, but also opportunities that companies can try to solve. So in these secular megatrends, there can be problems that can be fixed by producing solutions, and that can be a quite profitable profitable investment idea for an investor. The chapter continues then with the challenge in integrating ESG factors. And there are many challenges. These are things like, because it has to do with ESG being an evolving area of the investment industry. It's not yet set in stone. Things are evolving, things are developing. So one is the understanding of fiduciary duty, which is kind of evolving, as I just said. The question is, as I already stated before, is does integrating ESG, erode financial returns? Another challenge is, the data quality, data availability. The chapter tackles this issue by showing results of some studies that have been conducted on the influence of ESG factors on financial performance. So the big question, does integrating ESG lower returns? That's being tried to get answered by showing the results of those studies. And then finally, the last few pages talk about the immense growth that we have seen in industry standards, reporting initiatives, policies, applications, signatories of different industries. This shows just how strongly this space is growing and will probably continue to grow for the next years and decades. Now, if we had to pick 5 topics for you to focus on, we would definitely say, look at the types of responsible investments. These are the things that we mentioned at the top: impact investing, responsible investing, sustainable investing, and so on, best in class. So those are important that you understand. Then the Stockholm Resilience Center, 9 planetary boundaries. I think because that's at the core of the whole issue, what are we as an Earth challenged with from a climate perspective? I think that's quite important. Then the notion of financial materiality, the challenges to integrating ESG, data availability, all those kind of things. And lastly, the key initiatives, UN Global Compact, UN PRI, Sustainable Development Goals, and all those things that have been introduced in the past few years.